Ryan, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Not too bad. Yourself?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. You're a busy guy at the moment.
You can say that. I was quite busy in October last month, but it's slowed down a bit now. So it's probably quite a good thing because it gives me a bit more time to focus on some things that I've got to focus on. But yeah, just going day by day and just whatever happens, really.
Well, I'm probably saying that you're busy because it feels from your social media that you're busy. There's always stuff going on, right? So, for those who haven't followed you yet, you need to go and follow Ryan Micallef on socials. He has probably the most unique style of sim racing content I've ever seen, and I feel like we've got you quite early on this show, right? So I invited you along to the show based purely on like the content that we've seen you creating so far and the speed at which your channel has grown. I feel like, and maybe this is a bit, I don't know, a bit strong or it's a bit heavy for the first 30 seconds of the podcast, but I feel like you represent like a new generation of sim racers coming through, a generation of sim racers that understand that it doesn't have to always be so serious.
Yeah, 100%. Like, that's one thing that I've really noticed about like the racing industry and sim racing and everything. It's very professional, but like it's very professional on camera. However, behind the scenes, it's all like the boys. It's all just we're laughing, we're joking. Everything's not serious at all. Like we'll be in a race with like 28 people on the grid, and it's like a proper competitive race, and like everyone's like serious about it, but we're all just laughing and joking while going 3 wide down the straight, and like no one sees that side of things. So it was just like it is a different view, obviously, but I still think it gives enough information and like professionalism to actually be able to like do well commercially as well as on the media side of things. And it's just like a breath can't speak breath of fresh air. So like obviously you go on to like YouTube, Twitch, whatever, TikTok, and it's always look at this sim rig or look at that sim rig or look what happened in my race. And it's just like, it's all the same. So like you see different creators, but it's like, you just done the same as that and the same as that. And obviously that's why I wanted to stand out. And I've taken more of a like YouTube approach to things. So like if you look at people like, I say like Mr. Beast, Willany, Sidemen, people like that, I've adopted that kind of content style to then integrate into the racing side of things. And obviously that's a very big niche, like Mr. Beast, Willany, Sidemen. So if I can adopt it into sim racing, not only does it help me grow, but it also helps the industry grow as a whole and brings new people in and all these different things.
Yeah, I definitely watch it and I can kind of like see the thought process that's behind how you're creating your content. So you do a lot of karting. You're a sim racer for Kimura Performance. I know you're absolutely smashing the Motorsport UK F4 series at the moment. I believe last time I checked, you were first and second in the last race. Like, feels like
something like that. Yeah, I don't really remember.
Something like first and second. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So it feels like the performance isn't suffering because of the content, right? But just to give our audience who maybe haven't seen any of your content yet, and honestly, I feel like you're, in terms of like reach today compared to like some of the guests we have, small, but I think have a huge potential in comparison to like the average like sim racing influencer that we have. And I feel like the trajectory you're on, you're going to be overtaking pretty soon. So I'm kind of keen to see like why you're doing it, what your thought processes are, and like what led you to do it. But to give our audience like an idea, what's like a classic Ryan short? And you seem to like the short form content, I would say, is definitely the definitely where your accounts are excelling at the moment. But give us a taste of like one of your standard shorts.
So just a taste of my standard short. It's sort of like a vlog, but it's got a storyline, and it's a bit hard to like say because it's like I don't really know. Like I just really produce the content and it just falls out how it falls. But like if I was to really describe it, it's like sort of like a vlog. However, it's got that storyline, like it's got the build up, it's got the the context, it's got the breakdown. Like sometimes I like reward like the viewer at the end, like for watching and stuff like this. However, I still really need to define, I feel like, what my videos are about, or give them more of a structure. However, yeah, it's just like I'm trying to incorporate more of that entertainment media side into things. And obviously, like, as a racing driver, you don't really have much else to talk about except for results and your races. So you need to make people care about what you're doing, because like if someone came up to me, or if I saw something on social media and it said, oh, I've just won this race, I'd be like, okay, yeah, well done, we've all done that. Like, do you know what I mean? However,
some of us have done that.
That's a bit harsh, but yeah, but like, you like, people don't like the reality is people don't care, especially on social media. Very small attention spans. I think like people say it's like people like scroll on a video, and if you don't, like, 3 seconds is, or whatever it is. So you need to make people care about what you're doing, and the way that I make people care about what I'm doing is by giving them a storyline, context, behind the scenes, personality. So all these things sort of bridge into like one whole big, not really a character, but a character in a way.
I feel like it's the personality thing that stands out the most, because there's a storyline, and actually the interesting thing about your content is it tends to span a longer time period than most. It's not short form in the sense that it's look at this overtake, or oh my god, 3 wide, or blah 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 blah, bloody back marker, like all the kind of classic like short form content you see. Like yours tends to be like a day out. It's like you're going go-karting, and it's how you prepare in the morning, and then you get there, and a little bit like tiny little clips of the race, and like the whole day is condensed down into like 25-30 seconds, but the whole way through, like every short is peppered with these little like jokes, and whether that's just like some text on the screen, or an arrow, or like a quick meme that comes up, like it kind of keeps it entertaining the whole way through. And I think that's the thing for me that stands you apart. I mean, you've had over 500,000 views on TikTok already, right? So it's incredible, like the speed at which this channel is growing. And I think the differentiator is the personality and the fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. It is definitely that, because I say it to a lot of people, and I say, like, obviously racing, like I said earlier, it's very professional, and the audience don't really get to see personality behind things. So like if we look at Formula 1, for example, Lando Norris, he's got a very good personality. He's very in touch with his media side of things, and he just gives that relaxed look and feel about the industry and what his career is. And that really goes in the audience's favour, because I don't think you'll see anyone who don't like Lando Norris, because he's just that bubbly, funny breath of fresh air. So that's like what I'm adopting. Obviously, it's just, I just feel like it's not the biggest way to, like, this is another thing. Like, it's not the best way to grow, because it's a bit like, it's very about you. So you're not like piggybacking off certain things. So like if you piggyback off certain topics, you can get more exposure. However, I'm going more down, it's all about me in a way. So it's definitely harder to grow, and it's definitely harder to reach wider audiences. However, once you reach the wider audiences, it reaches the wider audience.
Yeah.
And it also builds more of a fan base as well. So people like me for me, and don't just go, oh, he's uploaded another video, we'll watch that. They'll like look at my posts and look at my stories and interact. So it's all like building an audience as well as providing funny 100%. Content.
And that's what I was about to say, because it's definitely like an element of fandom, i.e. it's not, like you say, you're not piggybacking on other trends. It's about, this is your journey. And a lot of the stuff that you do it's kind of has this angle of like, here is a day in the life of, or here is behind the scenes how I get ready for a race. It's kind of giving people like that feeling of exclusive access to how you're prepping. Now at the moment, like the sim racing audiences are not huge. You get more views on your TikToks than any, I reckon if you tallied up the viewers of every race you've ever done online, like the viewers of those races would be far less than the viewers you've had on your personal TikTok, right? Because it's just the viewership is 100%. Just not there. But you've now gone like pro as a sim racer. You're racing for Kimura Performance. Like you're now on a path to higher profile races. And when you arrive at those higher profile races, you're going to arrive with sponsorship opportunities because you're going to have personal reach that has been created because of you, as opposed to just because of the content style that you put out.
100%. That's another thing as well. Obviously, personally, we haven't got the biggest budget, so we can afford certain things. Obviously, sim racing side of things, it's more like we can do it. It's obviously just the outlay of the rig and sometimes like entry costs and things like that. However, still it gives me that like persona, so I can like, obviously, like you said, the audience base is not like the biggest, so obviously I can help increase the audience base. Also gives me it can help me get my foot in the door to certain places as well. It's all these different things, and obviously, like you said, with sponsorships, social media is where it's at for sponsorships nowadays. Like, sponsors back in the day used to like love results, and oh my god, you can our brand can be associated with your wins and success and stuff like that. However, it's now, what can you give us in return? And the only way you can really give stuff in return in racing is obviously through social media exposure and things like this. So it definitely puts me in a good position for that as well.
Yeah. So tell us how it happened then, right? So you know, you still fairly young, even for a sim racer. I'd say you're pretty young, right? So like, how has this happened? Like, tell us like from the beginning where you started racing to now racing for Kimura Performance. And then I want to talk about Kimura Performance as well, because it's not a name that a lot of people will have heard of, but it's a very interesting concept.
100%. So it all started, I'll go right back to the roots. So I started watching F1 in like summer 2019. I'll go even further back. So I started playing football, and then I had 2 injuries in my ankles. Like I broke both my ankles, and then every time I went back out to play football, it was just like I couldn't, like my ankle, I would always roll my ankles. They were very weak, so I couldn't keep up with that performance gap anymore. So then I went to watch Formula 1, because my dad has been watching Formula 1 since like F1 2012 or something, however long ago that was. And obviously I got into it then. And then we bought a sim because real life racing weren't accessible for us at the time. So I bought myself a Logitech G29 on my desk,
Classic.
with the pedals underneath. Started playing F1 2019, and I racked up like 350 hours on the game in like a month or two. It was crazy. Like, I just sit there playing it all day, and I was not very good at all. Like, I just would spin all the time, and I was not very good. But obviously I just kept playing and playing and playing. And then in 2020, it was late 2020, so October time, like it's a year forward from when I first started sim racing, and I got like this rig. It's like some Australian company, but it was like an F1 cockpit. It wasn't very comfortable. I don't really know what the brand was called. It's not like I don't know. I don't know what the brand was called, but it's like, it was made of wood, and it was painted as a McLaren, and I thought it was sick because, like, little young 13-year-old me, I'm like, oh my god, I got an F1 car in the house.
Yeah.
And it had Fanatec pedals and a Fanatec CS, the 2.5. Oh, I forgot what it's called.
CSL. The
CSL, yeah, that's it. And it had that on it, and I was like, wow. Anyway, that went and went. I got that, started playing on that, and by this time I'm getting better. So I'm like starting to get more into it. The pedals are helping, steering wheel's helping, everything's going well. And then in 2021 was when I like first started getting into competitive sim racing. So in like December time, I joined a team, and they was like helping me get my foot into league racing and all these different type of low level like competitive leagues and stuff. And then when 2021 came about, I upgraded my rig again to like even higher stuff, because I'm now getting to the point where I'm actually quite competitive, and the pedals and the wheelbase and everything that I was running is like, I'm starting to grow out of it. So obviously I upgraded again.
So what did you get? What was the next upgrade?
The next upgrade was like Heusinkveld sprints.
Nice.
And then like an OSW wheelbase. It's like a step down from SimuCube, a step above the DD1.
Yeah.
And like that was like really where I was like getting into it. Like, and then 2021, all 2021, I was just doing low level competitive, like league racing tournaments with my old team. And then 2022, I didn't really do much. So like it kind of like fizzled out for like the first half of the year. However, I got back into iRacing mainly in the summer, and I was doing like the British F4, like the F4 car just came out on iRacing, and it blew up. Like all the karting drivers, all like the real life drivers. It's just like one of them cars that was made to bring in the real life audience, I feel like.
Yeah.
And obviously I started going competitive with that in like the official iRacing lobbies. And then doing that for 3 months, got my iRating up to like 6.5K, if anyone knows what that means.
That's impressive. That's really high in 3 months.
Yeah, so I always used to hover around 2.5 to 3.5K from like early 2021 to mid 2022. And then I just went hard on F4. And yeah, I managed to go up to like 5.5 to 6.5K within like a month and a half or 2 months. So yeah, but I was like one of them kids that just like sat indoors all day, just like driving like 12 races a day. Yeah, literally. And in October 2022 was when Kimura came and was like, we have an entry for British F4. Do you want to race for us? And obviously, I'm like, of course, like, who's not going to say no to that when I'm not in a team properly? I'm not properly in a team, and I'm not doing these big events. As a step forward in my career, I jumped on the opportunity. And also my mate Matt, obviously, you know Matt from the Sim Expo, and he came in the same time as me. And then from there, we've just been doing British F4. Like British F4 last year, we become P4 in the constructors, or P5 in the constructors. It was very close to becoming P4, but still was a good season. There was a few races where we got podiums, nearly won a race at Knockhill. Yeah, it was good. Like especially with big teams like Apex Racing, because at that time Kimura was a startup.
Yeah.
So we've just gone like all in. We've just like, let's just do it. And to come out P5 in the constructors as their first proper competition was crazy. Like it's very good. And then yeah, like this year we've been doing like all the iRacing special events. We've been really branching out as a team. Like Kimura have started to bring in like all these different sponsors to help with obviously funding and giving us better like opportunities and things like this. And they're really starting to like get their name out there now. I think like people know who Kimura are, especially within like the motorsport UK sort of like with the British F4 esports GT Challenge, which was another championship me and Matt done that we actually won. Like we won the whole championship. So we've got a day at like base performance, like simulators. Nice. So it's really starting to like come together for us, and we're all just evolving as a team, taking it step by step, obviously. And then obviously to where we are now, doing British F4 esports again. And yeah, it's just been
kind of nuts
a long
how
old
fast,
journey.
Especially the Kimura Performance element of this has grown. So Kimura Performance, based in London, they kind of have this, they call it a platform where they have the sim racing team, and then they have an influencer agency like in the same office, and they have a social media team, and they have a podcast office, and they have all of these kind of elements that can all help each other out. So as a sim racing team, you can provide like the content, like the, excuse the pun, but the vehicle for the content, and then you've got the podcast studio, the influencer studio, the social media agency that can all kind of like chip in together. And then they have other teams, and they do some MMA stuff. I think they have like a motorbike races. So they've got this kind of platform of sports, so motorsports and virtual sports teams, plus the supporting infrastructure for it. So it must have been pretty exciting when you turned up and you kind of saw the scale of what they wanted to achieve and what they wanted to experiment. Like this wasn't joining a Discord server with 15 people that like had a team. This was you walk into that office. I've been to that office in London several times, and it's in Bank in the center of London, and these guys are taking it seriously. That must have been a pretty cool feeling when you arrived to be like, oh, okay, so it's like a team.
Yeah, I remember the first ever time I went to the office was for the first round of British F4 esports, and we got to the office and I was like, this massive building, and I was like, Jesus. And yeah, like we walk in and they're like, we have to sign in and everything's like very professional and that. And then obviously we went upstairs and it was like, okay, this is like, this is amazing. Like, this is a new step. Like, this is high level stuff. Like, I've never done this before. This is great. And then obviously, like, they've got, like, it's just like a very welcoming place as well. Like, all the people are very nice. You can very get on with them. Like, really get on with them. Like, they're all nice people. And yeah, it was just like overwhelming for me, really. Like, being in such a professional environment.
Yeah, it must be a nice place to learn. You know, Ollie Hall, the CEO, is like one of the nicest, most supportive people like I've ever met. Has done a huge amount for Gridfinder. We owe Ollie a lot. And then you've got Tobin Lee of Pace Note, who's a previous guest on the show, who's managing your team. Obviously, Tobin was pretty much a co-founder, part of the founding team at Quadrant. Like, ran McLaren Shadow, the Ferrari esports program. So you're in good hands, right?
100%, yeah, especially with Tobin. Like, Tobin's very, very good at what he does. And obviously being a sim racer himself before, like a high level sim racer, he really knows how to run it and how to approach me and Matt as well as drivers. And Tobin's amazing. Like, I could not praise him anymore. He's one of the best people that I know. And he just does absolutely everything he can for us, and he's just really good at what he does as well.
Yeah, he's probably about the best mentor that you could hope to have as like
100%.
As a young sim racer starting out along a promising path. Like you're gonna avoid some pitfalls. You're gonna get some fast tracks by being part of the team with Tobin. So let's now tie this story in with your social media, because you could just be like a lot of the esports drivers, like, I just want to do the racing. I just focus on the racing. Everything else is nonsense. I'm just doing the racing. But I feel like you're taking a more mature approach, which is actually there is value to building this personal brand. How are you managing to tie in this very professional entity that is Kimura with your very light-hearted content? Have you found opportunities to build any crossover there?
Really, like, I think I just like do what I have to do with my content. Like, Kimura love it. Like, they think it's really good, so they don't really have a problem with like the lightheartedness and all the like not being as professional, because obviously it gives them like a personality as well. Like, this is the drivers and the people that we have in the team, and like it definitely helps as well. Like, they've never really had a problem with it. They love it. So,
well, I would argue that the two things aren't mutually exclusive, right? You don't have to be serious to be professional.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Actually, when you're trying to reach an audience, it's kind of the opposite. Being professional is, in a way, kind of just being yourself and making sure that you're documenting it and you're putting it across through your social media channels. But I've also been enjoying watching your real world racing content. Tell us about your real world racing career.
So my real world racing career is obviously come on leaps and bounds as I've grown up. Obviously it's still very hard for us financially. So like this year I raced cars like Fiesta Junior, got very good results. Like I won the first race of the season. I've multiple podiums, P2s, P3s, all that good stuff. However, we've had to like miss certain rounds due to financial constraints and things like that. So it's very good, like how far I've came. It's just very shaky at the minute. So we're trying to get it on lock, and that's one of the main reasons why I started my content, because obviously I want to be a racing driver. So to be a racing driver, for me, I have to bring in money, because we can't pay for it ourselves. So the content is the biggest part that I can like leverage to like businesses and sponsorships and stuff like that. But my real life is going really well. Like, obviously I started in karting, and I started in like, once again, low level karting. Funny story. So
yes,
the first ever day I went karting, we rock up to the track, all
Which
like
track?
confident. Bayford Meadows in Sitting Bull.
Yeah.
We rock up to the track. It's really good. That's where I started. Obviously, it's my local. It's not my local, but my park's my local. But Bayford has been the one who run owner drivers more, because Buckmore is more of a rental karting track. However, we turn up to the track all confident. Oh yeah, look, I've got my first kart. Look at me. Yeah, put the kart on the grid to go out for the first session. I'm starting to drive out, and I just start getting waved down by this marshal, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I'm just, what? He stops me and he says, sorry, mate, this ain't the right group. You're in the next group. I went out with all the 10-year-olds in all the slower karts.
I bet you felt fast there. It's good for the ego, isn't it?
It was good for the ego. Not when he told me. I was like, okay, I want to go home now. This racing thing is not for me.
So it's kind of interesting because this story, so we've had, all sorts of esports drivers from, James Baldwin to Sebastian Job. Like we've had the whole Red Bull team, the McLaren F1 esports team. Like, and there is a common story, which is they get into karting, try and do real world racing, budget's a problem, turn to sim racing, and now they're racing for F1 teams, but in the esports side of things. And the F1 esports was previously kind of like the place to go. It was the only place where it was, the teams were organizations which had enough of a marketing budget to justify sim racing as essentially a marketing activity, because sim racing isn't making any money for these teams, right? It's an expense, it's a marketing activity. But now we're starting to see stuff like Rensport and some high profile iRacing tournaments and the bigger prize money, and now teams are starting to be able to kind of justify the existence of their sim racing teams. And it feels like you're kind of on a very similar path. But the interesting thing here is that it's not, I don't know, but it's not necessarily like, okay, the whole point here is I want to get to an F1 esports team, or the whole point is that I want to go and race for Redline or whatever. The kind of exciting thing here is that it's an early industry, you're an early stage of your career with an early team. So there's so much like potential for all three of these to grow, right? So you have, the industry will grow and more competitions will become available, more prize money. Kimura performance will grow as it invests more and it starts to understand the sim racing space better. And then you grow basically at exactly the same time as it. You're kind of riding that first wave. It's like, it's almost akin to, people who like bought Bitcoin in the first few weeks, right?
Yeah.
It kind of feels a little bit like that we've had the first rush of sim racing has kind of happened, and now we're starting to experience this second wave appearing.
Yeah, 100%. And it's obviously very exciting. And the way that it's going, like you said, is very good. Like I've been saying for the past like year, and some people are going to call me crazy for this, whatever. But
I'm excited.
I personally feel like sim racing will be not bigger, but bigger than real life motorsport.
Okay.
So it's a very controversial opinion, and my reasoning is because there's millions of people who want to be racing drivers, millions of people who dream of being in F1. However, do they have the money? No, they don't. Simple question. Like, it's just the harsh reality. Do they have, let's say, £500 to put towards sim racing and get a rig? Yes, they do. And that's what I feel like a lot of people are doing nowadays. And like you said, people are not making it in the racing, like the real life racing industry, but they're making it in the sim racing industry. Yeah. And they're getting paid for it. In the real life industry, you have to pay for it. So it's a bit like,
all the way, I feel like nearly the top.
Literally, exactly. Like, I think the only series that I really know that people are getting actively paid to drive for is British touring cars. And that's like the pinnacle of British motorsport. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And to get there, it's not cheap. Like the series you have to go through is a lot of money, like hundreds of thousands of pounds. And for the average person, it's not possible. Whereas sim racing, they do it. They can do it as much as they want, and they get paid for it. So sort of like outweighing the pros and cons.
It's very interesting because it's kind of a total leveler, because you have the Pro-Am series. Now, the Pro-Am series, obviously, the AMs pay for the pros. That's the term, the gentleman drivers. It's where they came from, because they're the AMs. and they're usually execs of huge companies, and they do a racing series once, maybe twice, and then the next exec comes in who's on millions and millions, and they essentially pay for the whole team, and the pro is getting paid to be the pro in the team. But but even those pros have had to invest a huge amount of money to be qualified as a pro. So yeah, it's a very it's a very like inaccessible sport. But the interesting thing is, it depends how you would define bigger. You said sim racing is going to be bigger than motorsport, because in terms of if you were to say, how are we defining bigger? Because if it's which of them have more people taking part, well, sim racing is already bigger, like thousands of times bigger. If it's about viewership, well, then that's totally different. Because if people could watch real life racing or sim racing, I always say that they would watch real life if it's a choice. People have got so much demand on their attention, right? From social media, watching short form content, to watching longer videos on YouTube, to watching Netflix or Amazon Prime. You have these huge 100%. Giants competing for everyone's attention all the time. Yeah. And sim racing somehow has to compete with that. But the interesting thing about sim racing is sim racing's rival, when it's competing for viewership, is motorsport. And motorsport has got millions pumped into it. And you've got that real sense of jeopardy when you're watching it, right? So it's always going to be a difficult competition. However, when it comes to actually taking part and ownership, I think that's why we're seeing this whole industry existing around sim race. So I remember when I was a kid, like, you'd be able to buy a wheel and pedals out of the Argos catalogue at Christmas, and it would be like, 50 quid or whatever, and it would be basically on a rubber band, right? And that was kind of it, and it was just a bit of a kid's thing. Whereas now, the manufacturing processes and precision that's going in to create this hardware is absolutely insane. Like, crazy. It's the how far this industry has come, and more companies are piling in to the same space. If you look at Moser and Simagic and Thrustmaster and Logitech, that basically had the same products out for like 20 years, have all of a sudden had to go, oh, okay, now we need something new now. So they've got their direct drive versions, which they never had before, because there was no demand.
Exactly. And like, it's crazy, like some of the manufacturing stuff. Like, I'm not sure if there's many videos on YouTube and that, like, showing the process, but it's crazy. Like, even to say, like you said, back in the day, it was off a rubber band, so there's like no force feedback. It's just nothing. You're just turning the wheel. Now, my wheelbase is rated at 33 Newton meters. Like, when outrageous. I turn that to full, like, I can't turn it. I'm like, me and my mates are like jumping on it to get it turned, and like, it just shows how far it's come just in the engineering side of things. Like you said, it's mad.
Yeah,
like, genuinely, it's so mad.
Yeah, as racing fans and sim racers, we're obviously incredibly lucky to be like living through this particular era of sim racing, or perhaps we're so invested in it because we are here at this particular era of sim racing. But how do you? So when I look at your content, I can see immediately when I watched this, like, there's a long play here. This is smart. There's obviously a vested interest here, because it doesn't feel like you're doing it just because for fun. It feels like there's an end goal here. So what's your plan? Because you're still early on. Kimura Performance is still early days. What's the plan?
The plan? You put me on the spot. The plan.
Plan.
All right, so the plan. So what I've been thinking. So like, I'm a big believer in just like, whatever happens, happens. So like, obviously there's certain things that you have to make sure that you do, and there's structure to it. However, whatever happens, just happens. Like, put one step in front of the other and just go from there. But my long-term goal is obviously use my social media as leverage to pay for my racing and obviously make myself a career. And then also to give me a fan base for sim racing that I can then monetize and obviously run events for, and just be an idol for people. Like, because like, it's one of the things that I'd never really had growing up in the motorsport thing. I've never had someone to look up to. And
none of the drivers, none of the F1 drivers. Would you say that you didn't really?
No, like,
no, that's interesting.
And the reason why is because it's too inaccessible for me. So I can look up to them as much as I want. However, I'm not, like, let's be realistic. I'm not getting to F1. Like, it's too late. We haven't got enough money, so I don't really like look up to them.
Yeah,
I look up to
kind of see the connection.
Yeah, exactly. Like there is not really a connection. However, I feel like with my content, I'm giving like people a role model in a way.
I'm going to just dive in with another question, because you kind of wrapped up the answer. You were saying that you said, I didn't have an idol, so I want to be an idol. So I'm going to follow on that thread. And Liam, you're going to have to edit this away. It's fine. It'll be fine. So in the same way that you want to be an idol through your content, you're also coaching people, right? How did that come about?
It came about like because obviously like I have the skill set like to be able to give people my knowledge. Like once again, like it's like me and Matt, like we made RM coaching. So that's just like a tired thing we done as like a little project just to see how it'd go and obviously gain experience and stuff like this. However, with the coaching, it's like people don't really do personalized coaching, but they do. Like people like Swelio Almeida, people like these, like they're obviously very good coaches, the best in the industry. However, once again, I just still think it's a bit inaccessible. And like Swelio Almeida, I feel like he targets a older audience, so he will target like the older type of people, and obviously he charges quite a lot for his time, which is completely fine. Obviously, he's got that knowledge; he can charge that much. However, we don't charge that much, and I do it sort of just like once again to complement my content and what my beliefs are. Like I want to help people, like, and it all ties back to I've never had that help. I've always done everything myself, content myself, everything. So I want to give back to the younger people. My demographic is mainly like young teenagers to like 20-year-olds. So I just really want to be that type of person that they can look at and go, okay, he's in the same situation as me. Obviously, can't afford this, can't afford that, but he's actively doing this and I can actively do that. And it all ties in together, really. And what better way to offer coaching to people as well? Like,
yeah, man, that's very cool. Must be very satisfying. Well, we've got Swelio coming on the show next week, so I'm kind of excited to hear like what that lifestyle is like. But yeah, so it sounds to me like you have this kind of, it's almost like you're building, this is such an overused word, right? So I'm going to vomit a little bit for saying it right. And I think I've already said it in this episode, but like an ecosystem of various different offerings as Ryan the brand. So you have the racing and the results that come with it. You have the content that you're creating in order to grow your reach so you can monetize what you're doing. And then you also have the coaching that you and Matt do, which again, presumably allows you to earn enough money to not have to go and supplement your income with a job, which would cut into practice time, etc. So everything kind of feeds into each other. But going back to El Plan, right? 2 years time, what series do you want to be winning?
Put me on the spot again. I don't really know. Like
all of them.
I just want to do everything in life. Like genuinely, I want to do everything in life. But really, in 2 years, if I'm in any type of high level cards, I'm happy. Like
interesting, you went straight to real world.
Yeah, the main thing I want to be doing is real world. Obviously, that's most people's dream. However, sim racing, if I was to obviously go down that path and also complement it with real life as much as I do now, without like my content getting in the way and stuff like this, possibly I've really thought about like F1 esports. Like, and I know it sounds stupid because I've never really driven F1 and I've always been iRacing and that, but
I don't think it's stupid at all.
No,
because the skill set is so transferable. And yes, F1 the game feels different, but actually a lot of the process that you go through to get good at it is the same process you go through to get good at iRacing. It just feels different. Like look at Sebastian Job, right? We had him on the show a couple of times, and he's interesting because he jumps between different games. He'll jump between ACC, iRacing, and now Rennsport. but he's in the Red Bull F1 team. But he's going to be like kind of separate to the F1 team because he's doing the Rennsport stuff. So he's going to get really kind of attuned to Rennsport, but he'll be able to jump straight back into F1 esports, because I feel like there's a lot of people that we speak to who kind of pigeonhole themselves into kind of one game, and they're going to absolutely become the best at that game. But then in the same way as, when you watch Drive to Survive and you have Valtteri Bottas talking about how rally has really helped him in F1 because it feels different and you can understand the car in different scenarios. 100%. In sim racing, you kind of have a similar thing where it's like iRacing is a lot twitchier, right? So if I kind of have that similar thing happen to me in F1, I'm kind of more used to it because I've done iRacing, or vice versa, right? So 100%. There's definitely, I think there's huge crossover, and this is kind of an interesting thing about the sim racing industry as a whole, is that we call ourselves sim racers. We don't say that we're ACCers or iRacers in the same way that, like, in the rest of gaming, you would say, oh, I'm a World of Warcraft player, or I'm a Dota player, or I'm a CSGO esports. Like, all those esports players do one game, like, forever. Like, Crimsix is, an exception. He was the most decorated and won the most cash of anybody in Call of Duty, and now he's doing sim racing. But again, he's got an ambition to go into the real world. But by and large, sim racers are sim racers. And I think the best sim racers are the ones who can jump between the games and get up to speed really quickly.
100%. And once again, like you were saying, the skills are very transferable. So I'm going to link this back to real world because obviously that's where my main experience is. However, I used to, back to Bayford Meadows, I used to race there for a year and a half, non-stop, only track I ever went to. And I hit a barrier. Like, I couldn't go any quicker. It was just, I was going backwards really, because I weren't evolving as a person. I weren't learning new skills and stuff. Same with the sim. If you stick to the same game, you're not learning. Like, you just hit a point. You can't go any further. Whereas if you done iRacing, then went to F1, you can handle differently. Like, the car handles differently. You learn how to handle different cars. You learn how to finesse things. Like, it all, like, it's like you say, it comes back, it grows your skill level, and makes you a better
more
driver.
Dynamic.
Yeah, exactly.
And adaptable as a driver. And something else that's even more important, in my opinion, having spoken to dozens and dozens of like esports drivers at the top of their game, one trend that I have noticed is the drivers who race more than one sim enjoy it more. They enjoy being a professional sim racer a lot more. Like, and I'm not going to mention names, but I've spoken to some like F1 esports drivers who all they do is F1 day in, day out, and it's just, muscle memory, and it's 7-8 hours a day. And speaking to them like off the podcast, like outside of the podcast, like, they're not enjoying it. It's a job. And actually, it's not a very well paid job. It's a cool job because of the shirt you get to wear and the factory you get to walk into. But they don't seem to really be enjoying that career, because once you're there, that's it. There's nowhere further to go. You're not going to be like, okay, well, I've won the F1 Esports Championship. Great, I've got an F3 drive. That's not how it works. Like,
no.
You're just there, and you do it over and over and over and over again until eventually, like, somebody else that's sharper and faster and younger comes along and is, a tenth faster than you, quicker, and it takes over until they degrade. So, and exactly. that sounds like a really bleak outlook. I don't mean it to be a bleak outlook, because obviously being an F1 esports driver would be insane. The travel opportunities, the opportunities to meet F1 drivers, the fact that you could be part of such a prestigious, professional, incredibly rewarding team would be crazy. But the guys who have done F1 esports and are still doing iRacing or still doing ACC, or they're also competing in Rennsport, they still enjoy it because they're jumping between the sims and it's always fresh.
Exactly. Like, it's human nature to want to have something to work towards. And obviously, like you said, if you're going between game and game, you're getting that, I have to be quicker, or let's learn how to be quicker. And it all makes sense. Like, it becomes, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, it becomes a chore. So you have to do it. It's not like, I get to wake up this morning and learn how to be quicker, or there's a different track I can drive, and it all just becomes a bit repetitive.
Yeah. And given the the nature of your content, it feels like you're not somebody who would tolerate not having fun.
Yeah, no. I have to have fun. Like if there's things that happen and it's not fun, I'm like, oh, like
what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I'm not saying it out of like what's the point in, like, it's just I always want to have something to work towards. Like it's just human nature, I think.
So it's still early days, but
yep.
Up to this point, and we'll have you back on the podcast in like a couple of years' time, and it'll be a crazy story, I'm
Fingers
sure.
crossed.
But up to this point, what has been the highlight of this crazy sim racing journey?
Probably joining Kimura.
Damn.
100%. Like, not only is it my first like professional venture, it's also like really solidified my friend group as well. And like me and Matt, like we never really used to like talk much. Like it was about 4 weeks before Kimura that we actually like first started speaking to each other, just because we was in the same races. Like, oh, good luck, mate. Hope you don't crash. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was one of them things. Yeah.
That feels like that feels like a psychological game to me.
No.
Hope you don't crash.
F4 iRacing lobbies are the most either dirtiest thing or the cleanest thing you'll ever see. But it's like, yeah, like I never really spoke to him, and then we went to Kimura, and now like Matt's my best mate. Like, everything we do or I do is involved in Matt. Like, I wake up in the morning and Matt just sent me a message on Snapchat, just like some stupid message, just for no reason.
God, I feel old.
And then it's like, even with my other mates, like when I wasn't doing sim racing properly, I was more doing it by myself just because why not? But now all of my mates, we just get in a call and we're like, we race and we work for something and we bounce off each other, and it's just brought us all in together in that aspect as well. And obviously Kimura have given us insane opportunities. Wilton charity event where I first met you.
Yeah, that was great fun.
That was a great day. Like Aston Martin were there, like all these big profile people, Ben Daly, Max Fosh, like loads of people. It's very big opportunities.
Yeah, that was a very cool day.
Amazing day. It's like one of my karting highlights, like genuinely.
Yeah, so that was nuts. Getting taken around the track in Ben's McLaren. I did not think that a McLaren could go that fast around a go-kart track. And it's like, because you just think you're never getting up to speed. I think we only got into second gear once, but like it was that was quite an incredible experience. Okay, so I've got to ask then, because I've asked what the highlight's been. What's been the most challenging moment so far?
Sim racing.
Real or virtual?
Real or virtual. I'll do a real and a virtual.
Okay.
All right. So last year in 2022, I went for a massive dip. Like, I say mentally. So like I told you, I got to like 5.5K to 6.5K between that iRating range. And then I went through like a stage in like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And I was just like, no matter what I did, like even if I was the most careful person ever, if I was the most cleanest driver, whatever, I would always get caught in an incident. And it'd always be like the most insane thing ever. Like I would be driving and someone would just come flying across the other side of the track and just kill me. And like that was my proper down point, because I was like, why have I now dropped down to like 4.2k iRating? Like 2k lost in 2 weeks, and I was like kicking myself, and it was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like it's boring. And then I came back out of it here now, and obviously it's just the way of life. It always happens. Like, I've seen a thing and it like really resonated with me. It's like success isn't like a graph like that. It's like it's up, down, up. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like that's really stuck with me. And then in real life, the biggest thing was, it might have been this year. Like, I'm trying to starting to do my content, and I'm like really putting like my effort into the content and stuff. And then obviously we couldn't go to round, not sure what round it was, but we missed a round of Fiesta, and I'm like, it's game over. Like, we're not going to be able to keep it up. And like, I got really like, I even like stopped doing content, like stopped doing loads of things. I just was like, oh. but obviously come back out again. So it's just always dips in life. You just got to keep pushing through them. Like, it's just the most generic advice ever, but it's just the way it is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because racing, those two examples are both equally applicable in real and virtual. Like, you watch, even when you watch F1, you'll see drivers will have like an unlucky spell, and you can see that they're down. You can see that when they enter the paddock on the Thursday for media day, they're just not as pumped up as you're used to seeing them, because the last 2 or 3 races they've had an incident, and it's getting to them. It might not be their fault. And iRacing, I flipping love iRacing, but I feel like there's a momentum to iRacing, right?
Mate,
I started, obviously did the Mazda season, and a couple of those, absolutely loved it. And then I think I did the Skip Barber, and then I did the Porsche Carrera Cup, and I absolutely loved it. And I was flying up to, well, I say flying up, right, relative, right? I'm not as fast as most people. I think I was like 3K maybe, and I was like, oh my god, I'm in 3, because I think you start at 1.5, right? And I was like 3, oh my god, this is incredible. And then same thing happens, incident. I didn't finish a race, 4, 5, and then you're back down to like 1.4, and it's like, well, okay, I've spent months grinding to get up here, and you get this sense of, okay, maybe there's something here. And then the worst thing is it's when it's not your fault. And that's quite interesting as motorsport. And I think I've said this before in one of the podcasts, but the unique thing about motorsport and sim racing, that they share this trait, is that when you're competing, you have to compete with your competitors, not just compete against them. I.e., when you're side by side in a corner, you're competing with them. You have to work together, even though you both want to end up in front. You have to work together with your competitor to ensure that you don't both crash out by giving each other space and following all the racing rules, etc. Which is fascinating, because I can't think of many other games or sports where you have to work with your competitors to ensure a baseline of success for you both. Like, if it's a running race, you're just flat out on your own, whoever's fastest wins. If it's football, there's no element of trying to work with them to make sure that you both get a decent result. Like, it's just not a thing. Whereas in motorsport, you have this very strange element of having to work with your competitors, even though you both want to beat the other. And when you're online, that distance kind of accentuates the issues that creates, more so perhaps than real world racing. Although I imagine the higher up you go in real world racing, the less and less people are working with each other, because more and more competitive.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and that's like they really, really preach race and respect. And obviously, like you said, you have to work with your team. You have to, not with your team, you have to work with your opponents, but also work against them. And it's like a really fine balance. It's really hard to explain. Like, you explained it really well. Like, just like, I can't really spit it out. I don't really know what to say. Like,
it's almost like you're trying to work together, but you're both aware that you're both trying to outdo and outsmart each other. So that element of trust is like, okay, I'm going to give you a bit of space there, but I'm not going to give you too much space. If I give you too much space, then you're going to overtake me. So I'm going to give you just enough space to survive. And you have to trust that that's going to happen each time.
Exactly.
And when it's online, you don't know who this person is that you're working with to beat.
100%. And it's just one of them things, really. Like, and you see it, like, the people who can really, really race, and like one of them people that, like, as soon as they get into P1, that's it, they've won, because you can't get past them. They have really, like, found the balance between respect and, like, get away from me, like, I don't like you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they've really found that balance.
Yeah.
And that's what makes people, I think it's all a maturity thing. Like I see all the immature drivers are normally the ones who are always crashing, running people out of road and stuff like this. So it's all about just accepting the fact that you've just got to do it. And even though you might hate that person because they've wiped you out 4 times, you still have to respect them to be able to get to the point where you want to be. And it's just a maturity thing. You need to just figure out the balance between hating someone and wanting to, like, drive them off the track. And giving them enough room so it don't look like it's your fault. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And especially when there's that added element of other people are watching, and you know for a fact when you're side by side with somebody for a few corners and your race is being streamed. Like sometimes I'll listen to the commentary live whilst I'm racing, and if I can hear the commentator talking about the race, I give them even more space, because there's nothing worse than being blamed on a stream for an event live. It's the worst feeling ever, because especially like, you know, this sounds really bad, right? But I'm very competitive in life generally, right? I kind of want to build the best thing I possibly can and always be the best version of myself. But when it comes to racing, sim racing, because I'm so consciously approaching it as it's a fun thing to do, I'll always give a bit of extra room. I'd rather this person overtook me than I ruined both of our races. But you know, that I think sometimes, you know, if you do that every time, over time, you're gonna lose out. You know, you're gonna lose it. You're gonna lose a few KI rating. Right?
100%. And it's definitely like not being selfish, but you have to, like, it's like I said, like, it's really hard to explain, and it's really like, because it's so hard to get out. But
it's like a weird diplomacy. It's like
possibly.
You're almost like negotiating on track. You have to learn, especially in iRacing, when you don't know these people, right? You just see a name, and you maybe when you get up to the higher echelons like yourself, maybe you start recognizing names, but down at the bottom, you don't know who you're racing against, and you kind of, through movement of your car, it's a dance, it's a negotiation. You're kind of feeling each other out, and if you get through a couple of corners side by side, and you think, right, they could have cut me up, but they didn't. You've got all these kind of like implicit understandings happening between two people, but with no verbal communication, purely just in terms of racecraft, which is freaking fascinating.
It is crazy. It's like, but you've led me on to something there. It's like body language. Like you can get body language from someone's car. Like you said, like you can see what they're like and what they're doing, and it's like the aggressive people are always the ones that are moving around a lot on track. And they're always here, there, or whatever, breaking it early and trying to whatever. And then the people who are normally respectful, normally the ones that are more like smooth, calm, and they're just like, you pick these things up as you obviously become better and more experienced. And it's like, it's really like weird, because obviously there is nothing verbal, but you're talking to that person in a way.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. Like you said, it's crazy.
Well, this is making me want to go race. Ryan, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
No worries.
For anybody listening, do go and check out Ryan's accounts on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube Shorts, because I think they're very, very different, and I'm enjoying watching them. I kind of like my feed's pretty passive, right? I've got feeds of all sorts of sim racing, multiple stuff, and it just happens. But I do kind of look forward to yours coming out, because it's a little mini story. And I'm not just saying that because you're on the show, but like it's like a little mini story, and it's usually like makes you crack a smile when you're watching it. So do go and check out his channels. But Ryan, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it, and good luck for the rest of your time at Kimura.
Thank you very much. Fingers crossed it all goes well.
I'm sure it will. Cheers.